Alright, welcome to a video. On this video I'm going to cover shading. So, I have 4 different tools here. I've got a normal pencil, charcoal pencil, a mechanical pencil, and I'll explain that later, and I have a fine liner. Well, the same method applies for any kind of pen, but I'm just going to use a fine liner because, you know, it's fun. Alright, so let's start with the most basic one. Alright, so for the first section of this tutorial, I'm going to show you basic pencil shading. So when I say basic pencil shading, I mean different types of pencil shading. There's, I guess you can call this simple basic shading, where you basically go from light to dark and dark to light, getting a simple shading tone like this. It's the most basic of shading, not that hard. Then you have different styles like crosshatch. Oh my god, stop refocusing. Fine. Like cross-hatching, like it's not that easy to do. Cross-hatching is more better for like pens and all, but I guess you can like, you know, you can like use it for this. It really just depends on situations. It's used to like show darkness in like unique situations. So I'll push it off to the side a bit, that way my hand doesn't get in the way and refocus it. Alright, so there's also smudge shading. Like you can apply like a light coat of pencil, and then you can just like smooth it out with your finger, and then you can use an eraser to like fine line. Suppose I set up this, I just erase whatever's outside it, whatever's unnecessary, slowly add on layers of darkness, and it's like, it's a quick process. It's not really the most typical type of shading. It's good for skin because it gives you an even complexion sort of tone. So you have to like experiment and figure out all the styles. There are more styles of shading. They just seem to escape me right now. I mean, like, I'll probably get back in some of my books and check, but I'm kind of lazy. There's also like all kinds of different shading you can do. Like you can do like directional shading like this, which is all, these are all just like different types of shading, which all depends on like what you're doing at the current moment. So to show you like shading, I'm going to draw a circle here. So I'm going to have to draw everything on the right margin because my camera has a stupid autofocus. I don't know how to turn off focus, so... Alright, there's a decently drawn circle. So we'll presume the light source is coming from the top right. So let me just draw an arrow. Like this. Alright, that's a terribly drawn sun. But you get it. So now, there are some factors that apply. So first of all, the areas which are not receiving light are going to be the darkest. So it's obviously going to be here. So you're going to start here, and you're going to apply your first layer. Like you can develop your own techniques for shading. I'm just going to do like what I feel like doing right now. Like I even use different shading types on different pictures. I'm just going to darken it here first. Go. I just don't like those outhanging lines. One second. Mechanical pencil with a sharp eraser is also a good replacement if you don't have a kneaded eraser, if you want to do like fine erasing. Although I do plan on getting a kneaded eraser eventually. Just maybe not this century. Anyway, so you want to slowly deepen. So first of all, this area around here, roughly, you're not going to apply anything because it's receiving direct light. So you want to apply like a light sort of like layer surrounding everything else. Now about direction of shading also. So if you're shading like a dark thing, you don't want to change the directions too much because it just like spoils the whole feel. Like you don't want to shade like this and then something like that. It just looks like unclean. It just looks bad. But if you're doing something light, like this, the direction is not really of concern because it's just so light. It just blends together. You could do the same thing with that, but it requires far more pressure and just like, you have to work on it a bit more. And that should be about fine. It's so hard to erase this stuff. Anyway, I just ignore it. So you can apply a light layer. Now this is not how I usually shade spheres. I'm just trying to make it like really simple. Also, when you do this, you want to make sure you blend it with the line that I circled you there, but generally you're not even going to draw the circle. So now I'm going to show you applications of smudging. Instead of going through and like make everything smooth, just smudge it. Done. Makes it a lot faster. So now slowly just build. You just want to build the darkness slowly from everywhere. Okay, I'm not going to look in the camera screen and shade. That's hard. So you're going to slowly just build. You're going to make it really dark here. Now you can also do shading diagonally. That's one thing. If you're going to do shading like this line, you want to avoid doing something like this unless you're going for a crosshatch sort of feel or that. But if you do it diagonally, like similar to like a parallel direction, it does blend quite neatly. So I wouldn't discourage that, although you have to know when to use it and when you want to avoid it. Especially when you're doing like more gentle or like really rough areas, you want to avoid that because simple line work like that can show up. Alright. So you can just like smudge this. Now of course if you're doing it properly, you want to, you know, pay a bit more detail into it, but at this current point in time I'm really just trying to make it fast. Because, you know, 8 GB files aren't really that fun to edit. So you can smudge it. You can also use a brush. That's like a little trick you can do. You can take a brush. It gives you very even shading, but it takes a lot of time. Like you can get like, you can see a little bit of what it does, but it's really like you spend time on it and you get a good payoff from it. So it's just like a lot of personal preferences in this. Now for the angle of the shadow, so let's grab a scale here. You don't really need a scale, just doing technical things. So you can match up the line. Now this is what I think would work. So you can match it up here. So basically this is like super scientific. You don't really need to do any of this, but this is like if you really want to get a perfect shadow. So basically you're gonna have the shadow like this, meeting up to this point. You can give it a light tone. Now I wouldn't recommend actually doing this. I'd recommend getting the feel for how to draw shadows on your own. But this is like something you can do. You can, now I'm gonna cross hatch this sort of. Cross hatching with the pencil is a bit hard because it tends to just like blend in together really neatly. Or not neatly, so it's really just whether you get it right. So that's my shaded circle. Not really that great. The dark areas aren't blended too well. Just work it. I didn't say anything. Alright, so that's done. It's not really that well shaded. I'll just try and smudge everything together. Alright, so that's done. Now I guess I can, so that's like normal shading and smoothing. So I'm going to show you cross-hatching with the fine liner. So that'll be next. So basically you got normal shading down. Now when you're doing larger areas like blocks of fill-in, that did I really just say fill-in? Oh my god. A filling. You wanted to use a flat side. You want to use a lot of flat shading because when you're using the point side, you get a lot of like lines on this, which you really want to avoid because it's like it's harder to blend neatly. Like you can see here. If you use this blunt side, it's so much easier. Now this time I'm not going to smudge. I'm just going to show you how to fill. So you want to first go for like the light layers. Like in basically drawing this, it's a lot of just layers. And what it does basically allows you to build up slowly. Like if you've ever seen makeup tutorials or something, you know you have to like first, you know, clean your face, then like apply some sort of anything really, and then like build off that. So just slowly, neatly just shade it. Solid. You want to make sure you maintain an even tone. So that's like one solid color. Now this pencil isn't the most perfect for shading. It's a 3B. You might want to use an HB for a more solid feel. Like as the level, the number of the B, like 8B or 9B increases, the side shading, like we're just like the whole bit, it becomes very brittle. Like here, do I have a pencil I can show you with? I'll just try and do this with 2 hands, and you won't notice. Oh. You didn't hear that? Okay, so this is a HB pencil. Normal. You get a lot. It's a lot easier to do like line work with this and shading. This is like the most simple pencil. Now, if I take something dark, like an 8B here, you can see that there's a lot of texture behind it, especially the rough shading. You can see that it basically picks up every detail behind it. Very rough. Gives you a texture you might want to use on certain cases. Like, I don't know, you could probably use it for a road or maybe a bit of cement. There's a lot of possibilities with it. So I'm just gonna finish this off quickly. You can also do like a diagonal application of here, but you want to make sure it blends in. You can do any direction for like you can do circles, but you have to make sure it blends nicely. As in, you want to use one level of pressure. Now for pressure control, there are different techniques you can do. Pressure control to improve your shading is go dark, light, increase the darkness, light, go back to dark, like that. It's better if you have a paintbrush because you get like also you have to vary the thickness. Like I have a brush pen which is basically broken, but it's a brush pen. One second, let me turn that back. So you can, if you have a brush pen, for some reason you can practice like getting thick and thin. You can get very thin and thick brushes. Like this one, I don't know, I guess I dried it up. It's like you have these kind of cartridges and they dry it up for me. So I have another one. I'm still a bit nervous about using it, in fear I might mess it up. But you know, eventually I'm gonna have to use it. So this is basically a solid block of shading. Now I realize it isn't that fantastic because I tend to avoid doing the shading because there's always going to be like a little catch to it. You can always just like smudge it to get more even shade, which is what I love to do. Basically I smudge everything. You could take a brush here, for example. This would be a good example. Just quickly go over it with the brush. Now you want to be a bit more patient when you use your brush. There we go. So hopefully you can see a bit of difference. I really don't know. I really can barely see any. Alright, so now that we have pencil shading on, let's move on to pen shading. I'll just grab the sheet. Alright, pencil shading done. I don't know if I'll do pen. I think I'll do mechanical pencil. I'll make this quick and short. Basically it's the same thing, except a lot of pressure control you want to use here. Like dark, back to dark. Sorry. Alright, so you want to make sure you want to practice. What am I doing? Alright, there we go. You want to make sure you get like, you have to have a lot of control on your lines, like pressure you apply. You have to be able to make such light lines that's like to a basically that light to really dark, like this. That probably came as a shock to someone, hopefully. Like I'll do this. No, mechanical pencil shading is also very tedious. It requires more time, but it does give off a very nice look if you do it properly. Very smooth look. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do a half circle for that. So you can just like gently So as you keep on doing this, you'll see that it's almost the same as that, but you get a more smooth, I guess. You don't get any texture with this, that's one thing. But it is good for cross hatching because of the very thin like line width you have. That's one thing it's good for. You can also get very, like I like to line my artworks with this before I begin shading them, because you get like one thickness. It's also very like a thin thickness. And so if like when I'm not planning to use a pen, just using mechanical pencil is basically what I use. Like I can show you some of my works, which I outline with pencil. You can probably just see them on the Facebook page, Anime Society. Shout out. So you see it, right? It's very like smooth. Like, you can see a lot of line work here. Let me see if I can smooth that out. Alright. Alright, that looks fine from here. I don't know how it looks on the camera. Let me just check. Yeah, I guess it looks fine. You can still see some line work on that. Alright, that looks about fine. Just darken the back a bit here. There's also swipe shading which you can use here, which is good in hair. Like suppose you're drawing like anime character's hair specifically. You can like suppose like, alright, it starts here, but that's a terrible example. Just ignore that. I suppose someone's hair like this. You can do this. It gives a very nice, appealing look to it. That's one thing you can do. You can also do like longer, like straighter lines. So mechanical pencil shading isn't too different from normal pencil shading. It's about the same thing. You just want to make sure you control your pressure. So you have to practice pressure variation when you're doing this. Alright, instead of wasting paper on, I just use the backs. Save paper. Alright, so now we'll do charcoal. I'll do pen last. I don't know if I'm going to put timings in the videos. I guess I'll just do pen now. People probably want to see that. Alright, so pen shading. Now you don't get like pressure variation with the pen. Alright, this is a terrible idea. I'm not going to use a fine liner instead. Bad idea. I really don't know what to use. I just use a simple blue ball pen. Ball pens are interesting because you can see people who can like get so much pressure different, like shade difference. These are like some pens which you can actually vary the color. Like see, I'll go from dark to light. But it does take time. So I'm being like very careful on how I apply it. So you see, you can definitely use a ball pen to shade. There's some amazing ball pen shading out, which you can just like look them up on the internet. I've seen some really crazy like Naruto shading, so that's really cool. But with pen, you're gonna avoid. Okay, it's sad face. Let's just make that happy face. That was a terrible idea to add teeth, so happy face, sort of, not really. Crooked happy face, that's creepy. Okay, so you're gonna want to go for more of cross hatching and more of line shading, like how I showed you. The same thing with mechanical pencil. This is something you want to go for more. Also, there's continuous line. Basically, you want to play with lines a lot. So suppose you have like a face. That's a very badly drawn face. That looks more like a... Just push that aside. You didn't see that. This is basically my... Really, I use guidelines a lot, so I'm not really good at this. So suppose you have like the neck hair. You can do lines, like simple, quick, continuous lines, like this for neck shading. If you want to like show more darkness, you can do cross hatching like this. There's also another thing where you can go from solid black to cross hatching. You'll see it in a lot of manga. It'll be like solid black, maybe with a brush pen, and then you'll have like a brush pen sort of here, like swiped angles. Alright, 1 second. Alright, so alright, so I've tried the crosshatch thing. It's not really that easy, so I messed it up. I guess I'll attempt it a bit more. So pen shading is very complex. I feel like pen shading, you should like develop your own style. I learned most of pen shading by looking at other work and just like guesswork. You'll also have like the line work a lot. Like here, I have a notebook of drawings. I'll show it. That was we'll just say it was a ghost. Yeah, he's my ghost friend Larry. He lives in my house. Like here, you can see the whole line work around this place and the line work here. And
you didn't draw that, Larry drew it.
Yes, Larry drew this. All right, so I have someone to kill Larry after this. So all right, that's about that for now.
You can't kill a ghost.
Watch me. I'll be back in a minute. All right, so I just murdered Larry. Alright, so now I'm just going to show you charcoal shading, which, now charcoal shading, and I don't know if you would do the charcoal shading the same way as I do. I probably do charcoal shading a lot different from you. So first of all, you can use charcoal for like filling, like solid black. It's like I wouldn't say it's a black color pencil. It's very different. There's a lot of residue, so you want to really like keep blowing it. So that's like one thing. This is a small tip. Just keep on blowing the paper so that the charcoal dust flies away. So when you use charcoal, you realize it's sort of like a thick shade you get, but it also has a lot of texture. So you want to keep your charcoal pencil sharp, and it also smudges really easily. In one swipe, you can see it smudges really easily. So you can use this to your advantage. So like suppose you have like character. This is my new star character in my manga. I'm totally going to use this design so no one steal it. So if you have something like this, like suppose the light's coming from that side, you can do like a light shading here, and you can just like smudge it. Now you want to avoid smudging the whole eye with it, but that tends to happen when you're drawing a 2x2 little box. So, alright, so charcoal also has other styles you can use it for. You can use like very rough texture you can get. Alright, yeah, so hopefully this gets caught in the mic. I'm pretty sure the mic is really sensitive, so I think this should be caught in the mic fine. So the best way to mix charcoal is with a tissue, which I don't know if I deleted that part of the video, but I don't have tissues. I waste them all on painting a drawing, painting, which is for you people not to see. That's again me checking. You can also use paper for it. I mean, just like tear off a scrap of paper. Wow, paper is hard to tear. You can smear it, but you just don't get the same feel for it. Like generally, what you're doing with large blocks of charcoal, you really just want to keep at it, and you also want to make sure you shade it evenly, so you have to go through too much trouble. So generally, when you're using charcoal, you want to keep in mind to use the point. Apply indefinitely in layers, like a light layer like this first, and smudge it like that. Or is it fucking terrible? Probably have to censor that. Let me see if I can shade this. Alright, so you basically with charcoal, I recommend smudging it a lot. The problem is I can't show charcoal properly because it's a very slow process to use charcoal. So I guess I can just like show you a charcoal work I've done. This is with charcoal and a bit of graphite. A lot of gentle work like this and like slow smudging you want to keep. So this is all charcoal, like all this down here is just slow charcoal and careful smudging. I don't remember if I used a tissue. I'm pretty sure I didn't use a tissue. Wait, no, I did. That was so you can see like the darkness. Like all this is mostly done with charcoal. I did add some graphite later on. Like here's some graphite, a little bit of graphite for this shading. Like I think that's graphite. The problem with charcoal is that you have to have very good like pressure control. Because if you apply like this is me doing like sort of like light decent, without too much pressure. This is light. This is how I probably would normally write in a notebook. Like that's how I normally write in my notebook. That's how dark it comes. So you do want to have a lot of pressure control. But charcoal also does come very dark, but it's also brittle, which I just realized. Also, charcoal does come in different ways. There's two types of charcoals which you can use. I think it's a vine charcoal, which is like uncompressed, and then normal charcoal, which is compressed. All mine are compressed, so you can get like really big solid black areas using a stick of charcoal. So I guess that's about it. Probably a terrible tutorial. Probably everyone's going to dislike it, but who cares? Hopefully I taught you something. Thanks for watching. I have to go edit this shit.